And Ben Simmons has been shut down for the rest of the season. Simmons already been diagnosed with a pinched nerve in his back as well as knee injuries. Simmons, 26 years old, sat out all of last season after requesting a trade from the 76ers.
This has to be one of the most bizarre and most unique stories I think I have ever covered in the NBA. And there's a reason why we have probably 20 plus videos on this particular topic at this point, because it's very unique and quite unbelievable. And probably my favorite part about this topic, although it's an unfortunate topic, is there's a lot of lessons that average people like you and I could take from this one particular topic. In my opinion, it's a cautionary tale about how one's perception of life should be, how one shouldn't take their opportunities for granted, and how one shouldn't be a petulant child whenever things get a little tough. So before we get to the content, every Friday we're going to be announcing a giveaway winner on this channel for $250. All you have to do is subscribe, turn on your notifications, and let me know your social media account in the comment section down below so I can verify it's actually you when I announce the giveaway winner. Now that we get all that out of the way, cue the intro. Some of the green slips you guys have been sending me is crazy, like $1,250 off of a $250 slip, or $1,500 off of a $150 power play. We've been making bank off of our basketball picks, bro. March Madness was a huge success, and believe me, we're about to ramp it up for the NBA playoffs. All you have to do is download Prize Picks, use my promo code microphone, and they'll match your first deposit up to $100 instantly. After that, just follow me on Instagram. I post all of my picks onto my Instagram story for free, and we can start making money off of these picks together. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? I want you guys to take this story more as a cautionary tale, because we've been covering Ben Simmons a lot, and if there's one thing you can learn from Ben Simmons is make sure you make the most out of your opportunities. Don't take them for granted, and when things get tough,
don't be a little bitch about it.
Obviously, mental health is a very real thing, and I'm not saying that mental health isn't something that you should take seriously. I know there's people that have genetic neurological predispositions to specific scenarios, and I respect that, and that's not where I want this video to go. However, in the case of Ben Simmons, I think we're dealing with a completely different animal, and at the very minimum, the one thing you can learn from this entire story is proper decision making, understanding your leverage, and how not to completely up your career when you have a good thing going. A lot of people think that Ben Simmons has no work ethic at all whatsoever, as evidenced by this terrifyingly accurate scouting profile that was written about him when he left LSU to declare for the NBA draft. And I want you guys to pay attention to this because there's some foreshadowing going on here. It gives you all of Ben Simmons' information, and then it gives you a synopsis. By the way, this is from Jonathan Givony, who is a legend whenever it comes to pre-draft analysis and scouting. And sometimes scouts get it wrong, but in this particular case, I think he hit the nail on the head here. Ben Simmons' lack of competitiveness in crucial games has raised questions about his character. Those who know him best say he needs things to revolve around him on and off the court, and that he's often been closed-minded to coaching or instruction. I wonder if this is true.
Spins on Gallinari, gives it up. Oh, he was right there.
Jokes aside, I was very critical of Ben Simmons in the earlier part of his career. It wasn't just me, by the way. The late, great Kobe Bryant, may he rest in peace, who was a gigantic inspiration to us all, and especially me, had this to say about Ben Simmons' game prior to his death.
Well, he's got to get a jump shot. It's like, it sounds humorous and all that, but I'm dead serious. You can't, like, because if not, he'll regret it. When his career is over,
If Kobe Bean Bryant is telling you the only thing you're missing from your game is a jump shot, dude, you better be going into the gym every single day and spending hours and hours and hours on your jump shot. But here's the thing, in the earlier part of Ben Simmons' career, one thing I was the most critical of him about was the fact that it seemed like he was stagnating. And this was very early. This was still when he was in year one with Doc Rivers, or even before Doc Rivers came into town. This was still when Brett Brown was his coach. And I said, there's something odd. It seems like people are content with Ben Simmons as a player. And don't get me wrong, he's a tremendous playmaker. He's a very good defender. He's remarkable whenever it comes to driving in. But the one thing that is holding him back is his lack of a jumper. And in 2017 to 2018, his first full season, technically his rookie season, he didn't attempt a three-pointer. He averaged 15.8 points, 8 assists, and 8 rebounds. In his sophomore year, he averaged 16.9 points, 8.8 rebounds, 7.7 assists. In his next year, he averaged 16.4 points, 8 assists, and 7.8 rebounds. All of those seasons, he didn't really attempt a three-pointer. Everybody knew that Ben Simmons couldn't shoot from three. You would get the occasional shot over the summer of him attempting to shoot threes, but alas, it wasn't necessarily something that he would ever execute in the middle of the game. I would even make a joke out of this on my Twitter and on this YouTube channel saying I no longer trust players that go into gyms over the summertime and start taking videos of themselves shooting threes because it's all a facade to make you believe that they're actually working on their game. If they actually attempt to do this in the middle of the game, then it's a different story. We were even told prior to this season that Ben Simmons will start shooting threes. That never ended up happening. So for the most part, throughout his entire Philadelphia 76ers career, he more or less put up the same stat line. That's a gigantic red flag. If you have been playing the same exact way throughout your entire career, especially when there are significant holes in your game, that is a gigantic red flag. And throughout this entire era of Philadelphia 76ers basketball, the Sixers did a remarkable job in being aggressive to attempt to build a team around Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons. That's not to say they didn't have some misses. I mean, they traded up from the number 3 pick to the number 1 overall pick in the 2017 NBA draft to draft Markelle Fultz, who was considered to be a seamless fit for the 76ers team, a player that could play on and off the ball, and a player that is a ball-dominant forward or point guard, I suppose, in Ben Simmons. Sounds like a perfect fit and a great young core to build your team around. A lot of people were drawing parallels between the Philadelphia 76ers and the Oklahoma City Thunder of the early 2010s with James Harden, Russell Westbrook, and Kevin Durant. When Markelle Fultz didn't work out because he had a very strange situation of his own where he sustained a mysterious injury where he wasn't able to shoot the basketball properly, the 76ers moved on from him and brought in Jimmy Butler for a brief rental. They had JJ Redick on the team. This team was very, very aggressive in putting together a contender around Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons. And I think the only hole in that offense was the fact that Ben Simmons couldn't shoot threes, but they still did their best to make it work. And while you did have moments like Joel Embiid crying when Kawhi Leonard hit that game winner as a member of the Toronto Raptors in their playoff series, where Joel Embiid would show his passion for the game of basketball and his frustration for his inability to win very crucial games, Ben Simmons didn't necessarily have the same demeanor. And every single summer we were told that he was working on his game, but alas, he really wasn't. And I believe things really hit a breaking point during the 2021 playoffs, where the Philadelphia 76ers met the Atlanta Hawks in the second round of the 2021 playoffs, a series that they were favored to win, by the way, because the Atlanta Hawks were just a few years removed from rebuilding at that point. And it was in that game where the wheels really started to fall off, especially in the final game, where as a result of him being too terrified to shoot free throws, he was passing up wide open layups underneath the basket. This is a former number 1 overall pick, known for his playmaking and his ability to score on the inside. But since he had a paltry free throw percentage of about 61% or 62%, which by the way is way worse now, he passed up a wide open layup. There's been moments where fans accuse players of choking. This is a brand new level because it was very clear that Ben Simmons was rattled. Following this, his teammates let him have it, and his coach let him have it. Doc Rivers was famously asked if he thought Ben Simmons could be the starting point guard on a championship team, and he said this.
Doc, do you think Ben Simmons can still be a point guard for a championship team like the one you guys want to become?
Yeah, David, I don't know that question or the answer to that right now. So I don't know the answer to that.
I think at this point, Ben Simmons had a very defining moment in his career. A moment that ironically, the man that he is going to get traded for, James Harden, would have to endure eventually. And that's when everyone was being overly critical about him. And don't get me wrong, I don't necessarily think it was a good idea to say this out in public. How was he going to respond? Was he going to hold himself accountable? Was he going to answer the call? Or was he, no, I mean, that's really the only option you have, because obviously otherwise otherwise. The alternative is pretty much telling the team that drafted you with the #1 overall pick, that invested all their resources in building a team around you, to essentially go themselves and to trade you. And that'd be a horrible mistake. That's what he ended up doing, isn't it? Yeah. So throughout the entire summer, Ben Simmons would make a gigantic circus about his future. He'd be very angry about the fact that the Philadelphia 76ers called him out in public, and he completely refused to play for the Philadelphia 76ers, which I think we've covered this in the past. Whenever you're a star player and you're playing for the team that originally drafted you, a team that clearly has invested a lot in your development, you're obviously going to get treated a little better by said team that is a smaller market that has invested a lot of resources in your development, as opposed to a team that trades for you. And I've said this multiple times throughout my career. I said this when Anthony Davis got traded. Obviously, the New Orleans Pelicans are going to be a little bit more invested in Anthony Davis as a player than a team like the Los Angeles Lakers are, who mainly got him as a complimentary piece to LeBron James. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, it just is the way it is. It could be a huge reason why Giannis Antetokounmpo never left the Milwaukee Bucks. It could be a reason why Damian Lillard still insists on remaining on the Portland Trailblazers, or Bradley Beal insists on remaining on the Washington Wizards. I'm sure money has something to do with it as well. But my point being that this is where Ben Simmons made a horrific mistake. He stamped his feet and said he refuses to play for the Philadelphia 76ers. And man, did the Philadelphia 76ers really try to develop him over the summer during this tumultuous situation. They tried to have coaches reach out to him, but he refused. They tried to have his teammates go out to him and convince him to come back and play, but he still refused. And through it all, he blamed it on his mental health, which I can understand that taking a toll on him mentally. I think he has a right to mentally be struggling as a result of a horrific performance and his coach calling him out in public. But at the same time, I'm very much the type of person that believes that you have 5 to 10 minutes to cry about an unfortunate challenge that is coming your way, which, by the way, I just want to make this clear. This is a man that was just called out by his basketball team on national media once his team was frustrated by his performance. This isn't a man that recently lost family or recently lost his best friend or something truly tragic occurring to him, which I think is a completely different thing. And I'm not saying that you don't have a right to be a specific level of upset at a specific scenario, but I do think you have a certain amount of time before you let a specific episode consume you and ruin your life. And that's what ended up happening to Ben Simmons. And check this out, because there's some irony here. I want you to compare this to something that James Harden actually went through as a member of the Philadelphia 76ers. Ben Simmons would eventually refuse to play for the Philadelphia 76ers, going as far as to not getting paid any money at all whatsoever by the Sixers and sitting out games as a result of that. The Sixers recommended a therapist for him, but he suggested using his own. There was a whole commotion about that before eventually rumors started to come up about the Philadelphia 76ers trading for James Harden, and that's eventually what would end up happening. Philadelphia 76ers pulled off one of the biggest heists I think I've seen in recent memory, trading a player that is clearly a shell of his former self, but it didn't necessarily have that value. At the time, everyone was thinking Ben Simmons needed a change of scenery, but trading Ben Simmons to the Brooklyn Nets for a package surrounding James Harden. Obviously, there were other players involved. The trade was so bad for the Brooklyn Nets that you could see how sad Kevin Durant was during the All-Star Game draft that year. They were even laughing at him as a result of it.
It was playoffs right around the corner, so we got to fast track into, getting used to each other, but I'm excited. I think everybody got what they wanted.
And James Harden even gave an idea of how dysfunctional the Brooklyn Nets were at the time, and that's the reason he wanted out.
There's a lot of dysfunction. There was a lot of internal things that I'm not going to never just say or put in the media or do anything. And that was one of the reasons why, I chose to make my decision. But now, fast forward today, I don't look like the crazy one. I don't look like the guy that, or the quitter or whatever, the media want to call me. Like, I knew what was going on, and I just decided to, hey, I'm not built for this. Like, I don't want to deal with that. I want to play basketball and have fun and enjoy doing it. And fast forward to today, they got a whole new roster.
But at this point, this is where things get really interesting because Ben Simmons is now on a team with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. His first test was trying to come back in time from a back injury, which he sustained just randomly. I mean, no offense, bro, but
you play professional basketball.
Out of nowhere, he has some sort of like spinal injury, which, okay, spinal injury, he can't play. The Brooklyn Nets with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving were able to sneak into the playoffs, but they were a very low seed as a result of the season that they endured and the injuries that they sustained. The team quite literally begged Ben Simmons to come out and play in game 4 of the playoffs. And they even said, look, come out and play for like 3 to 5 minutes. And if you have to come out, then fine. Because the original philosophy about trading for Ben Simmons is, look, Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant are more than capable as ball handlers and scorers. You get Ben Simmons and you have a player that thrives in transition and plays remarkable defense. Maybe he could slow down Giannis Antetokounmpo. You might be able to potentially make a run to the NBA Finals, but Ben Simmons refused to play. Now, look, I'm not coming out here and saying that,
oh my God, why wouldn't Ben Simmons play on an injury?
But the fact that he wasn't even willing to attempt to play for 3 to 5 minutes just to test it out, just to give some run with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, just to show to his teammates that he was willing to do anything it takes to get them the win is very telling. I mean, a good example was Anthony Davis during the 2021 NBA playoffs when the Lakers faced off against the Phoenix Suns in the final game of the season. Anthony Davis had a groin injury, and everybody knew he had a groin injury, but he still attempted to play on this hurt groin as an indication that he is one of the leaders on this team, and he's going to do everything he possibly can to give it all for his team to win a playoff game and try to extend their season. Now, obviously, I'm not saying, hey, Ben Simmons or Anthony Davis or players should attempt to play hurt, but it definitely sends a message when you were just traded for and you didn't play for your new team at all whatsoever, especially when they needed you the most. What was ironic was the Philadelphia 76ers also came up short in the playoffs. They weren't able to make it to the NBA Finals, but they had a hell of a run. And at the very end, what happened to Ben Simmons a year prior is what would end up happening to James Harden. Joel Embiid said one of the most brutal things I think I've ever seen a star player say to his co-star when he said this.
I'm sure, since we got him, everybody expected the Houston James Harden, but that's not who he is anymore.
I mean, obviously this isn't the James Harden of Houston, but after a loss, throwing your future Hall of Fame teammate under the bus like that, former MVP, multi-time All-Star, that's some pretty heavy stuff to say, and that's very insulting for sure. But James Harden took it on the chin and said in the summer he's going to take a pay cut and that he was locked in on trying to win a championship with the Philadelphia 76ers. Now, his future may be a little bit uncertain at this point, but he answered the call. He took that extremely well. He didn't cry and complain, and he understood that his teammates were emotional and that they were counting on him to come up big. And that honestly is something I could respect. You didn't see James Harden hold out in the offseason. You saw James Harden work during the entirety of the offseason and even saying that he understands this is the opportunity for him to win a championship and do his absolute best to get ready for the season. Whereas Ben Simmons at this point finally would make his debut for the Brooklyn Nets. And it was a very sorry situation because this version of Ben Simmons would not only lose the opportunity to run the offense through him, which the Philadelphia 76ers loved doing. They were running the offense through Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving at this point. But on top of that, Ben Simmons was so terrified of getting fouled and going to the free throw line that he refused to do the only thing he's good at offensively, at least in regards to scoring. He wouldn't even take the ball to the basket. This is a brand new level of ineptitude. So now Ben Simmons is essentially getting paid hundreds of millions of dollars to do cardio up and down the Brooklyn Nets court. And at this point, it was clear that Ben Simmons wasn't going to be able to save the Brooklyn Nets. I mean, up until this point, Ben Simmons' statistics have reached a brand new low. People are calling him a draft bust, forgetting how he was a pretty solid player during the first 4 years of his career. But when you go from averaging 16.9 points, 7.7 assists, and 8.8 rebounds in your sophomore season, and now you're getting 6.9 points, 6 assists, and 6 rebounds in the latest season. And your team decides to finally blow it up, trading Kyrie Irving to the Dallas Mavericks and Kevin Durant to the Phoenix Suns, which yielded a significant amount of forwards at this point. Now you're going to start to get a dose of reality, which is the fact that very shortly after these trades went down, Jacques Vaughn came out and said that he didn't really know what to do with Ben Simmons. As a matter of fact, he was in a very tough situation. He said it straight up, by the way, very, very quickly.
It's going to be some work that we have to do. Because you just take a look at what the lineups could potentially look like. Put another big next to Ben, then you got to figure out what the spacing is around it. Then if you put a playmaker next to him, then you got to figure out what Ben looks like without the basketball. Then if you go small with Ben, then you got to figure out, can you rebound enough with him? The challenges are ahead of us. We'll look them head on. We'll figure it out. We have the personnel to figure it out. Whether it is me mixing and matching throughout different pieces of the game and allowing him to have a group and run with a group, that part we'll figure out. But you see the challenges that lie ahead.
Let me tell you something, man. You want to know how many games Ben Simmons has played following this particular interview? Do you guys want to take a little guess in the comment section down below? Following this interview, Ben Simmons would play in one more game for 20 minutes. He would go 1 for 2 from the field and would put up 2 points, 4 assists, and 4 total rebounds in 20 minutes. And from that point on, he was inactive with a back injury. And at this point, it's clear that this is the end of Ben Simmons. This is the end of one of the craziest stories that I think I've ever heard. Because when Jacques Vaughn was asked about Ben Simmons' future and whether he was going to be playing, he said this: Ben will not be joining us the rest of the year and through the playoffs. After consulting with our doctors, multiple specialists, he's just going to begin a rehab program. Our doctors and the specialists feel and think that he'll have a full recovery, so that starts now. Ben hasn't played since the Nets' final game before the All-Star break last month because of a nerve issue in his back. He has missed a total of 33 games this season with knee and back injuries. As of now, Vaughn said that the Nets don't expect Simmons to need another surgery this summer. That is not in sight. That's the recommendation right now. So Ben Simmons has a nerve injury, which, by the way, you can't detect nerve injuries, bro. It's very hard as a doctor to detect a nerve injury. A nerve injury is very much one human going to another and saying, how do you feel? Very convenient. For all you know, maybe he is injured. I'm not necessarily a doctor. I only have a rough understanding of medicine because I am a man that dropped out in the middle of a biomed program, so I understand some of it. But I do know enough to understand that for the most part, nerves are just something you're feeling and that you have to describe to your doctor. As a matter of fact, you can't really use an MRI to determine a nerve impingement. Just a quick Google search will tell you that. An MRI may be able to help identify structural lesions that may be pressing against the nerve, so the problem can be corrected before permanent nerve damage occurs. So even then, you'll get like a loose understanding of what's going on. At the end of the day, I think Ben Simmons is just going to be at the end of the bench collecting checks until he gets cut, and then he's no longer going to be in the NBA. And he only has himself to blame. The Philadelphia 76ers were very much invested in him and were very much committed to Ben Simmons consistently improving as a player. And even when he didn't show that, they were still patient. Yeah, they've had some missteps. You shouldn't call out Ben Simmons in front of the national media, but the alternative of Ben Simmons saying, trade me to the Brooklyn Nets, where the Nets weren't going to have the patience to develop him or play through him, was a horrific mistake. And now, at the age of 27, Ben Simmons is still in the NBA. I don't think you're going to see him in an all-star game anytime soon. As a matter of fact, within the next 2 or 3 years from now, this could be the end of Ben Simmons. Let me know in the comment section down below what you guys think about all this. Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike. I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.